You're listening to the Appleton REIA podcast, a podcast dedicated to understanding the latest tips, tricks, and techniques to be successful in today's market of real estate investing. Appleton REIA podcast. Get ready. Here's the next episode. Well, hello. It is Dan, Jacci, and you know what it is. Appleton REIA podcast time. All right, we're here, folks, to help you guys be effective real estate investors in what seems to be an ever-changing market.
Ever-changing.
Yeah.
No one ever said it wouldn't change.
Well, sometimes we get so stuck in a pattern. I mean, we're creatures of habit, are we not?
Yeah.
So we understand that we like systems, we like processes, and that helps us to scale, really, in life and specifically in real estate. So, but what happens is there's variables that come at us in like a market shift that we may have to change systems and processes to kind of curb the tide, per se. So the title of our podcast today is Things Work Until They Don't, right? And how you can be flexible in a changing environment. And I think we're probably saying the obvious thing, the elephant in the room. It's a changing market right now.
Of course it is. Yeah. And it's historical.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you can go back over any period of time and markets change. Economies change, markets change, real estate certainly changes, interest rates change, perception changes. You know, things come and go in the world and in our country, and it just causes change.
Yeah.
So it's not like we didn't expect that to happen, right? But now we're in it.
We are.
You know?
And
it's coming up.
And one thing you can do to kind of at least be abreast of that, and obviously we're in a Midwestern market, which tends to be a little behind the curve, but I will say with just how connected the world is today, where things would take 3 to 6 months to hit where we're at, it's happening more in like weeks.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot faster than what it used to be. So things you can always watch is just financial industries of what's going on. Like just some things that I saw recently about the used car market really taking a dip.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. What I was reading is much what happened in 2008 with the real estate market. They had all these subprime notes. Well, now that's what's happening in the car market. So now all these people are being defaulted and all these people have cars that they can't afford. And used car market is not in a good spot. But it is a financial vehicle that does impact the overall financial picture of lenders, right?
Sure.
They pull back when there's risk.
Yeah.
And if there's all this adverse risk or subprime stuff, naturally that's going to flow over into the residential or the real estate. And we already see that.
And everything.
There's some big lenders right now that aren't even doing home loans anymore.
That absolutely blows my mind. I mean, a bank the size of Wells Fargo to pull back.
Yes.
It's yeah. And you're seeing this, you know, even worldwide, you're seeing different things happening with, you know, even with fiat money. You know, we've watched the crypto markets, you know, come up and down and down and down. You know, we've seen a lot of things happen. And over the last handful of years, things went exponentially up. And we all know the proverbial cliche, what goes up must come down. Oh, I didn't know they were going to get singing today.
Absolutely.
This is fun.
You got me on some caffeine today. Life's good, baby.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So, I mean, and here's the other thing. Perception is reality.
1,000,000%.
So if people perceive that things are moving in a specific direction, they are going to force the reality of things moving in a certain direction.
Right.
So as that perception comes out, even just from these financial broadcasts and the used car market, et cetera, then their perception is that that's happening all over the place. The wallet needs to squeeze and everything needs to tighten, you know, and they hear things happening across the world and, you know, World War III is imminent. And I don't disagree with that, you know, but again, when that perception comes in and people think, oh, there's, you know, all these explosions and all the, you know, warehouses burning down and trades colliding and, you know, we're on the cusp of nuclear conflict and all the different things, people start thinking, holy cow, like I need to hoard food.
Absolutely.
I need to get my guns and ammo. You know, I need to build myself a bunker. I mean, some people are that far over.
Well, you think about this. This is a nugget. This is a bonus I didn't even throw on our little list today. But people make decisions emotionally and justify it logically.
100%.
So if you are having this emotion of fear and adversity, what you're going to do is then you're going to logically not do things. Like buy things, you're going to conserve, you're going to pull back. That's independently, but also on the bigger level, on the macro level, right? With some of these large companies, it's the exact same way. If the board of directors or the decision-making powers that be, or the CEO or CFO feels this, they're going to say, listen,
they're going to react.
We're not going to lend, or we're going to tighten the guidelines of who we lend to, right? And we were talking almost about a month ago or a year ago, I guess, about how banks had, money to burn and they're just flushing money at 2% interest.
Yeah. And now they're kind of squeezing it a little bit and defaults are up. So, it makes sense that they have to.
Absolutely. So. And you might be sitting here today being like, Dan and Jackie, I get it. I got my head in the news. I watch the news. Hopefully you're not watching traditional news because that'll twist you. Try some independent news sources. That's all I can recommend there for you. But you might be like, my business is going well. We got good deal flow. We're doing deals, stuff like that. But the point of our podcast today is things work until they don't.
Yeah.
I can tell you. Yeah. I mean, in my personal business, and I talk to a lot of investors that are friends of mine across the country, they're seeing the overall lead flow diminish. And they're like, what's going on? These channels that used to be our cash cows now are like not producing like they used to.
Phone's not ringing.
Right?
Yeah.
So what are you doing about that? Are you planning for that, right? You got to plan.
You better plan or your business is dead.
Yeah.
Your business is dead. I mean, look back when we first got started, right? I mean, I know we opened our doors in 2007 when everybody else was losing and falling out. And again, because they didn't pivot soon enough, right? They didn't pivot soon enough. They thought, we're in the heyday and it's going to keep going the heyday. And I know multimillionaires that lost everything, including their own home.
Sad.
The entire portfolio wiped out. And, that can happen unless you keep your eye on the horizon, don't keep your head in the sand and be so ready to pivot that you already started pivoting before you needed to, right? And so I was joking with Dan earlier and I said, back in the day, things worked so good, we quit doing them. and now we're kind of coming into a market where some of those things that we did back then that did work so good, we don't need to put those back on the table because again, the ebb and the flow. I mean, things come around and just like fashion, I mean, it goes in style and out of style and then it comes back. And that's kind of the same with our markets, our economy, and sort of the way everything works and historically so.
Yeah, I would agree. So one of the things I think that you have to really analyze in your business right now is what are your marketing channels? If you're running this like a business, you should know what your ROI is, right? How much money are you spending on each marketing thing per month?
And what's it pulling?
Yeah, and one of the things that we got kind of pigeonholed in a while back is that we just had one marketing channel and this happened to us last year and we had something come in our business that really forced us on literally within a day's notice, we had to stop doing what we were doing and pivot. And we realized at that point in time, we're never going to be to the point that we're ever going to have one marketing channel. Now, what you should really have is one main one that you can trust and rely on. Maybe it's the tried and true, whatever that is, right? Could be direct mail, could be PPC. For us, it's cold calling, right? But then you need to have 2 to 3 other additional ones that are probably always in and out of the fold, the flux, So these are things that perhaps you want to try new and maybe it works and you do it for a few years and you test it out for 6 months or that one didn't work. So you kind of have some play with that, but having multiple lines in the water. And Jackie, that's something we teach students that come to us for real estate investing, right?
We don't let anybody have less than 3 different marketing techniques that they're trying all at one time. Because if you don't have multiple lines in the water, it's really hard to catch fish. And keeping in the back of your mind that try to remember when you first started your business, it takes a good 6 months to know if something's working or not. Now you might pop a lucky one, right? We call it lucky, but you might pop something right away and go, oh, well, I just started this marketing and a month later I have this deal already penned.
Right.
Okay, great. But we know you have to be willing to give it at least 6 months because it takes, a bunch of touches. It takes time. It takes, you got to kind of flood the marketplace and then you got to retouch people before they might make that decision to call you. And then they call you and then you got, your time between negotiating, et cetera, et cetera. So, people always say, man, everything's going really good. I must have worked hard this month. I'm like, no, you worked hard laying that foundation, starting probably most likely 6 months ago. And it's showing up today. And so we know that if you're in that up part of your roller coaster where you have a ton of momentum, that's when you have to be careful because that's where people pull their foot off the gas because they just got 2-3 deals under contract and they lay back on the marketing and then go another 6 months and now they're dried up. So kind of the same thing here, right? I mean, first to market wins. And how can you be first to market? Well, pivot before you need to pivot. Right. Start testing some of those new lines.
Absolutely. And, so if you're like the new investor, you may not have a lot of cash because marketing can be expensive. Trust me. We have 5-digit marketing costs each month. So the reality is that you have to be able to, if you are the seasoned investor, let's start there, and you have monies that you can play with marketing, you have to allocate that type of budget for 3 to 6 months, to Jackie's point,
Easy.
and give it that time, right? If you're a newer investor and don't have the budget, Jackie, you're the queen of free and cheap. You have to be willing to commit to those grindable activities, whether it be bandit signs, door knocking, cold calling, licking and sticking letters, networking, stuff like that you're doing day in and day out. You need to commit to that for a bare minimum of 3 months, up to 6 months, before you can really truly see, is this where my time's well served?
Right on.
And to Jackie's point, you might pop one immediately. We have students that have done that, like first phone call, boom, or a first letter or response that they get. But that's probably more the exception than the norm, right?
Yeah.
So
it's awesome when it happens.
It is awesome.
You can't count on it. And you can't be discouraged if it doesn't. And that's the key. You were just talking about the free and cheap type of stuff. Yeah. And as you're going through examples, I just know there's people on the other end of this line thinking, oh gosh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing too. If you're going to throw some new lines in the water, as you're starting to look at what are the different marketing things I can do, make sure you're not picking something that doesn't fit your personality, because you can make a business plan all day long. If you're not going to execute it, like you just had door knocking and somebody's like, I ain't going to knock on any doors, but door knocking works. I'm going to put door knocking in my plan. You're not going to knock on a door. Don't put it in your plan unless you're hiring somebody to knock on a door for you. So be realistic with your expectations of yourself and your own personality as well.
I'd agree. Yeah, because if you're not going to do it, why even write it as a goal? You have to commit to it and then execute it, right?
If you're not going to actually put the stamps on and get the envelopes out, and you're not going to put the budget together to hire someone else to do it, then don't even buy the mailing list. Why even put that in your plan if you know it's never going to be mailed? Yeah, it's the same idea with working out. You get the best personal trainer in the world, and they can give you the plan saying, you need to eat this way, you need to do these workouts for the next 30 days. Here's your end result. Or the next 6 months, I can get you down to 30 pounds and you're going to be the leanest in your life. But if you don't do those things, you can't magically assume that after 90 days, you're going to be at the goal, right? Just because you have the plan.
Yeah, the plan does nothing. You got to execute it, right? I think a lot of you guys understand that. So having those multiple lines in the water with marketing is one thing. I think the other thing you have to look at is maybe you've traditionally transacted one way.
Right.
Like for a while, cash is king, right? We're cash buyers, right? We've had other podcasts, we've talked about this a little bit, but I think now is the time you really want to be understanding these different strategies that you can close.
And especially if you're realizing leads are coming in, but you're not closing them.
Yeah.
Because your only offer is cash, right? So how else can you make the offer where you can get a win, not just for yourself, but you can make that seller win while not losing yourself, right? Where you both get to win. And so, for so long, the cash offer was the way to do that. But, as we were talking about earlier too, sellers are more willing to kind of look at those creative exits, and they have more equity than they've ever had before, because we just had this big, growth market. And everything didn't go backwards necessarily. It just stopped going forwards. And a little bit, there was some slippage if people were, completely stupid and paying 60 to 100 grand more than asking just because they wanted the house and they could pay for it. That's stupid money. But I'm talking about realistically, this appreciation that we acquired in the last handful of years, it's not going backwards. That's just the new pricing.
Right.
It's just the new pricing.
And the reality is that cash offers are still going to be out there, guys. And I would dare say you may get some better cash offers than before, because the competition is going to regress a little bit. You may not have as many players in the game. But to Jackie's point, when you have leads coming in and you're paying good money for this stuff, how can you monetize each and every lead? And really the goal is having multiple exit strategies on how not only are you going to maybe transact with the seller, but also on your end.
Yes.
Like, okay, am I going to, like we just bought one today, which get me for some drinks. I got a story for you. But our exit strategy, we're going to wholesale it. That's our first exit strategy. And if that doesn't work, we're probably going to rehab it. And then we have the option. It could be a really nice rental. I'm going to keep it probably for myself. Or we may just flip it, right? And I think I'll wait to see what the market holds 3 to 4 months from now, because honestly, I don't have a crystal ball, right?
Right.
And from there, I know as a rental, it would do just fine for me. But if we can turn some quick cash and flip it, we're absolutely ready to do that. So, so that's the other thing you have to be mindful of is like, how can I help this seller? And that's what it comes down to, right? Is really understanding that.
Absolutely. And that's where you're doing your fact finding in the beginning. Like, okay, what are your needs? Why did you call me? Why didn't you just list it, right? And we've talked about this so many times, but right now this is so important, is your meeting with that seller. What are your needs? How can I fill that. Because if their need is more than your cash offer can entertain, well, now you want to start talking about creative ways to give them what they need and still get what you need, where everybody comes out on top.
Yep.
And whether it's a subject to, or it's a hybrid where you give them some cash because they need to cash out on, you know, X, Y, or Z, or maybe they own it free and clear, but they need, you know, in the past we had a guy that needed whatever it was, 14 grand or something like that to pay off his truck, right? So at closing, we gave him 14 grand and a note for the rest of the price of the house. And we were able to give him more money because he was giving us a 0% seller financing note.
Beautiful, right?
And so we went in, we brought in the money to renovate, and then we put it back on the market and sold it as a rehab flip. And we paid him once we closed. That's golden. So when you can do those things today and you're taking into account that you don't have the holding costs of the money. So if you used to hard money 3 points and 12%, for instance, you're saving that because you're giving them 0%. And then, you know, so you're giving him that extra. You're saving it, but you're giving it to him. So you're not really saving it. You're just paying a little bit more to give them what they might need. Or maybe there is some way that you can assume their loan or buy it subject to the existing loan. You know, there's all kinds of creative things.
And
so
I think part of I think those are all great strategies. And literally there's courses and hours of education that teaches you how to do that. But what it comes down to, and what Jackie was mentioning, is you, when you're speaking to the seller, and this is primarily, we're talking about buying off-market properties. If you're doing the marketing, you're not buying from a wholesaler, you're talking to the seller themselves. What I challenge you to do is really understand, what's the problem?
Yep. What's your biggest need right now?
That's a great question, right?
What's your biggest need?
That's an amazing question to ask. Or just tell me what's going on right now. I need to understand. I have some great things that I can do for you, but until I really understand your situation, I don't know which is the best.
Yeah.
So can you tell me what's going on with the scenario? Why are you looking to sell? Tell me your world right now.
Yep.
And then from there, you just shut up and listen. And then you ask clarifying questions. Oh, wow. Tell me more about that.
Right.
I'm not familiar with that. I guess, how did that go? How did that affect you? Remember what I said earlier in the podcast, that people buy emotionally, but then logically make that decision and justify it? Same thing here. If you can completely get them on the emotional side and they see that the pain becomes so great and you kind of unearth it on that call, and then you have options to help them,
right?
Why would they not want to choose you?
And you can go back to your office and you can draft 2 or 3 different scenarios that all work for you and will work for them, and let them choose the one that works the best for them. And we've talked about this before, but we are coming into the times that is going to be your very best way to handle things. So not only, as Dan has just said, not only are we coming up with new marketing strategies so we can have those extra lines in the water, especially if one of the things you're doing or 2 of the things you're doing right now dries up, but also making those offers and getting, getting more of those leads to convert to signed contracts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you like to have a program or a plan for a seller that, let's just say, they need almost retail?
Yep.
There's things you can do creatively that can do that. They can give them exactly what they want. So that's the crazy thing about this, that if you get someone who's truly needing to sell and the motivation's there, the goal is to have enough tools in the tool belt that, okay, well then how about we structure it this way? Yeah. Or to Jackie's point, what's important to you? And then you structure that tool, whether it be a sub 2, a lease option, novations, lease. I mean, there's just a handful of ways you can execute this deal, and finding out what's best for them.
Absolutely. And that's the cool thing, is you can use a couple of different things, in maybe you can buy it subject to and sell it on a lease option.
100%.
I mean, you're like a win-win all the way around, right? And you're giving them their top retail dollar, and you're turning around and putting someone in there that couldn't otherwise get a home. You're collecting that fee up front, that non-refundable option fee, if that's how you do it. Yep. And, you're in and out of the deal. You got people in there and you've helped your seller. I mean, that's what winning's all about.
Yeah, agreed.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing you'll learn, is that you much like when I talk to landlords and I find out how they buy, people do these things. That's the beauty of real estate. There's really no wrong way. I mean, there's legal ways, of course, right? You want to protect yourself, but there's so many variations of how people do this. That's why there's a bunch of different courses on it. You know, you can find a bunch of gurus and they're all good systems. You just have to execute it, right? And find one, to your point, Jackie, that suits your personality.
Fits your personality. Something you're going to actually get fired up about and go do.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess the whole point behind this, guys, is that we understand we're in a changing market. What are you doing about it? And more importantly,
don't just sit on the wall.
Right. What's your plan? Do you have a plan?
Make a plan.
Because if you don't, you need to turn off this podcast as soon as we're done. We're finishing up quickly, but start thinking about that.
Yes.
And
brainstorm.
And what does that look like? Yeah, network with other investors. Find some out-of-market people, some friends of yours saying, what are you doing? Hey, you want to get on a call together and we Zoom it for an hour and just throw ideas and help each other, right?
That's funny because I have a Zoom next week with there's 5 of us jumping on a Zoom that we're creating a whole new way of getting leads.
Love it.
And we're in different markets and we're just jumping on a Zoom and saying, okay, I've done this. What have you done? What are some of your ideas? So that we can collaborate and take our new idea and make it bigger faster. Where I don't have to think of 100% of it. I'm thinking of 20% and I got 4 others thinking of 20%.
It's funny. I just thought about reaching out to some of my out-of-market friends that I interact with from time to time and just doing that exact same thing. So a lot of bonus nuggets today. If you don't go to like these meetups for like trainings, educations, things like that, where you actually have to leave market and go somewhere else. There's so much. I mean, the education's one piece, but I'm telling you the impact of people that you meet and the friendships that you form. Because you're there for 3 days.
And they're different markets, so they might have already tried some things because their market changed already or whatever, right?
I mean, I have some really good friends that are out of market that I would have never met. And I can call them on a moment's notice. And we, during the time we were there, we hung out, we had some beverages, we had meals together, and we bonded, and you're going to find certain people that you connect with. And then you just keep those lines of communication open.
Noodle
everything.
Hey
man, what's going on in your market right now? Well, have you ever thought about doing this? Because they're going to conversely come back to you and be like, hey, what are you guys doing right now? And having that type of sounding board out of market.
And they might already have like template contracts, you got to make 100%. It work for your state. But I mean, essentially that's easy, right? So here's the thing. If you have heard of different marketing strategies or different offer strategies, et cetera, deal structuring, when you've been at a REIA or whatever, and you're thinking, as you're brainstorming, thinking what you want to add to your template for pivoting. And you think, well, I heard about this, idea of subject to, but I don't know anything about it. Write that down on your brainstorm and then start looking into that.
Absolutely.
Or go back to the REIA and say, who knows about this? Who can help me with this? Hey, can we have a meeting about this? Because that's
and we've talked about this in prior podcasts. Look it up. But we talked about JVing with people. Like, you don't need to have to understand how to 100%. Execute it. Find someone in market like, hey, if I brought you a sub-2 deal, you said you know how to do it. Would you be willing to work together on this one?
Yep.
You bring one. If you're in market and talk to me, I'd be like, let's go.
Ditto.
We'll work it out. So, I mean, you find people with that mindset that's willing to have everyone win.
Yep.
Great thing is you're going to experience education along the way. You're going to help a seller, and now you're going to learn the process.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it doesn't take too many to learn the process.
Within 2 to 3, you're going to have enough knowledge and probably the forms necessary to feel confident to execute it.
Yeah, so start thinking about some of the things that you've heard about, like in marketing and or deal structuring, and put those in your brainstorm of, things you might add to your plan.
Sure.
But the one thing you shouldn't do is just sit on the wall.
Agreed.
You can't sit stagnant right now, or you very soon won't have a business if you're not lucky enough to have the marketing that is going to keep going, right?
And again, whether you're
things are going to stop.
A multi-million-dollar business right now, or you're a brand new investor just getting started, this is the same exact thing. You need to have both these things on your radar to be ready to pivot and have different options. So,
and even the stuff that maybe is slowing. So you were talking about mailers and things like that. Maybe you just have to change your message.
100%.
It might not be that you need to change the marketing technique. You might have to change the message.
Good point, Jackie.
Maybe you're doing phone calling and maybe you have to change the script.
Yes.
It's because when the times change, and again, perception is reality. So if the seller that you're calling or mailing to, if their perception is different, you might just have to change the messaging. You don't necessarily have to change the marketing strategy.
Agreed.
But again, eyes wide open, watch your numbers, track everything, and be ready to pivot. Pivot before you need to pivot so that you're in what they call the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely, guys.
Only one way to get there.
So hopefully this is helpful for you. That was the whole point of this podcast, that you can be ready to have that plan. And of course, when things work until they don't, you won't be sitting on the sideline like Jackie said. So if you like this type of information, education, heck, even just like us, you can come join us.
Who doesn't like us?
Well, there's probably a few haters out there, right? There's always
I got
haters.
a list.
But come to the Appleton REIA. I mean, last month was phenomenal. We had just such a great give.
Man, that was good.
From just people on the front of the room just sharing how to scale their business. But every month is a new topic. We sometimes bring some national speakers in. Not to mention the networking there alone. You're going to build a lot of great relationships. And the amount of deals and business that's done in the room is crazy. So it's at Holidays, just north of 41 in Richmond. It's a great location, and you can go to appletonrea.com, find out the next meeting, next topic. If you've never been, guess what? It's on us, right? You get your first one for free. Print out your visitor pass. Come check it out. It's kind of a try before you buy, but I think once you're there, you'll see the value. Not to mention all the vendor sponsors that you get. We don't have time to go through that today, but just go to appletonrea.com, check it out. And we'll be doing this one again next month, that being the meeting and, of course, the podcast.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome, guys. Have a plan, all right? Have a good one. Thank you for listening. It's Dan. It's Jackie. See ya.
See ya.
You've been listening to the Appleton REIA podcast. For more information and other episodes, visit us at appletonrea.com.